In Alaska, there are over 3,000 rivers and 3 million lakes.
Picture this. You're a moose hunter. You're sitting in an 18-foot aluminum skiff on one of the most remote lakes in North America. The water is glass still. The sky is wide and Arctic cold. Then, just beneath your boat, you notice two shapes, long, dark, and motionless. You assume they're logs, drifting, harmless. Then a family of swans glides past. In seconds, one disappears beneath the surface, without a sound. Then another. Then another. In less than a minute, every swan is gone, pulled under. And those logs you dismissed? They stir. Slowly. One of them rotates, and you realize it has eyes. Eyes the circumference of a soccer ball, staring up at you from the dark water below your feet. That account was recorded by Bruce Wright, a marine ecologist and former specialist with the National Marine Fisheries Service, a scientist, not a storyteller. And Lake Iliamna, the place where it happened, is Alaska's most dangerous and least understood body of water. This is not folklore. This is not a ghost story. Something lives in this lake. Scientists have studied it. Pilots have tracked it from the air. Fishermen have lost their gear to it. And more than a century of eyewitness testimony from credible, sober professionals points to the same conclusion. There is a predator in Lake Iliamna that science has never fully explained. Today, we're going deep into the cold water, into the history, the science, the sightings, and the terrifying truth behind Alaska's most enduring mystery. Before you can understand the monster, you have to understand the lake. Lake Iliamna is, by every measure, extraordinary. According to the United States Geological Survey and official Alaska state records, it covers approximately 1,000 square miles, making it the largest lake entirely within Alaska's borders and the 7th largest in the United States. It stretches 77 miles long and up to 22 miles wide. Its maximum depth plunges to 988 feet, nearly the height of the Empire State Building measured from its foundations. To put that in perspective, Lake Iliamna holds roughly 15 times the water volume of Scotland's Loch Ness, the most famous monster lake in the world. 15 times. If something wanted to hide in Lake Iliamna, it would have vastly more room to do so than in any comparable mystery lake on Earth. But raw size is only part of what makes this body of water so strange. Lake Iliamna is not isolated. It is connected to the ocean. Its primary outlet, the Kvichak River, runs approximately 50 miles southwest and empties into Bristol Bay, which flows into the Bering Sea. That 50-mile river corridor is the ecological bridge that makes everything about this mystery possible. According to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, between 5 and 8 million adult sockeye salmon use the Kvichak River and Lake Iliamna as part of their spawning cycle every single year. The Bristol Bay watershed, of which Iliamna is the beating heart, produces the largest wild sockeye salmon run on Earth, a fishery that generates over $2 billion in annual economic value, according to data cited by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game and reported in the Naknek-Kvichak district records. That river connection, combined with a world-class food source, creates the exact conditions needed to support an apex predator of unusual size. Because what follows the salmon? Everything that eats them. Harbor seals regularly inhabit the lake. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game confirms a resident freshwater seal population in Iliamna, one of only 5 such landlocked seal populations in the world. Beluga whales have been documented following salmon runs far up the Kvichak River toward the lake's edge. If seals and belugas can make the journey, then something larger, something shaped by millions of years of predatory evolution, could have made it too. And once something made it in, it would have little reason to leave. The lake's structure ensures that, beneath the surface, Iliamna is thermally layered. Warm, oxygenated water sits on top. Cold, dense water lies beneath, separated by what scientists call a thermocline, a boundary layer where temperature drops sharply. Below that boundary, sonar signals weaken, natural light disappears completely, and for all practical purposes, the deep water of Lake Iliamna is an unexplored environment. An animal below the thermocline could rest 30 feet beneath your boat and be entirely invisible to you. In a lake that reaches 988 feet in depth, the potential hiding space is almost beyond imagination. This is the arena. Now let's talk about what has been seen inside it. The systematic documentation of strange encounters in Lake Iliamna began largely because of aviation. During the 20th century, Alaska's remote southwest became accessible primarily by small bush plane, and pilots flying low over the lake's flat, clear surface began reporting what they could see through the water. One of the earliest and most credible accounts dates to the 1940s. A bush pilot named Babe Allsworth, widely known and respected in Alaska's aviation community, was flying over the lake with a government wildlife agent named Bill Hammersley. What they saw from the air was not a single shadow. It was a formation. Allsworth later described the animals as metallic-looking, each stretching nearly the length of his plane's wingspan, swimming together in a loose but purposeful group. Hammersley, a professional government official with a reputation for careful, level-headed reporting, corroborated every detail of the account. The Allsworth-Hammersley sighting was significant for two reasons. First, it introduced the idea of a population rather than a single creature. These things moved together. They were not solitary anomalies. Second, the credibility of the witnesses gave the mystery a new kind of weight. These were not frightened locals telling campfire stories. These were professional men with trained eyes and careers staked on accurate observation. After that account circulated, other pilots began to come forward. In 1960, a geologist flying with two companions spotted 4 animals estimated at 10 feet each near the surface. In 1963, according to a 1988 report in Alaska magazine, a state wildlife biologist flying alone observed a creature estimated between 25 and 30 feet in length. He watched it for 10 full minutes. In that entire time, the animal never surfaced for air, which ruled out any marine mammal explanation on the spot. Then came 1977, and the sighting that changed everything. Veteran air taxi pilot Tim Laporte was flying just a few hundred feet above the lake's glassy surface near Pedro Bay at the northeast end. He was accompanied by a visiting fish and game official from Michigan. Again, not a local, not someone primed by legend, but an out-of-state professional who had no prior investment in the story. Both men saw it simultaneously. A massive shape, lying still, its back just breaking the water. As the plane descended closer, the animal made a large arching motion and dove straight down. Laporte later described watching its tail, a vertical tail fin, not horizontal like a whale's, but vertical like a fish's, beating as it sounded into the depths. Both Laporte and his passenger independently estimated the animal's length at between 12 and 14 feet, with dark gray or dark brown skin. Laporte emphasized that the tail configuration was critical. It told him definitively that this was a fish, not a marine mammal. The sighting drew immediate attention, and the attention it drew had consequences for the next major chapter in the story. In 1980, the Anchorage Daily News, Alaska's leading newspaper, made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the state. The paper offered $100,000 in cash, a sum worth more than $300,000 by today's standards, for any tangible, scientifically verifiable evidence that an unknown creature lived in Lake Iliamna. The reward was not a publicity gimmick. It was a serious challenge. The paper required photographic or physical evidence that could withstand scientific scrutiny. No blurry images, no vague descriptions, hard proof. What followed was one of the most chaotic and fascinating hunts in North American wildlife history. Adventurers, hunters, scientists, and eccentrics poured into the region. Boats dragged massive baited hooks across the lake's floor. Sonar equipment scanned the depths. One widely reported account described a steel fishing hook, an industrial hook designed to catch halibut, the size of a man's forearm, returned to the surface bent completely out of shape, the metal distorted as if gripped by something of extraordinary strength. Nets came back shredded. Boat hulls showed unusual impact damage. One enterprising participant reportedly played classical music over the water. It did not work. Despite all of it, the $100,000 reward went unclaimed. The 5-month window closed. No photograph, no body, no confirmed specimen. But the failure to win the reward was not the same as finding nothing. The physical evidence, damaged gear, bent hooks, shredded nets, scarred hulls, was real. It was documented. It just wasn't attached to an identified species. Years later, television brought fresh attention to the lake. Jeremy Wade, the experienced angler and biologist behind Animal Planet's River Monster series, traveled to Iliamna specifically to investigate. Wade examined the theories, spoke to witnesses, and conducted his own tests on the water. He considered and tested multiple conventional explanations. He left without a definitive answer, openly acknowledging on camera that the mystery of Lake Iliamna remained genuinely unsolved. That matters. Wade has spent decades identifying supposed monsters as known species, giant catfish, bull sharks in rivers, arapaima. He is not someone who leaves cases open without cause. Lake Iliamna gave him cause. Here is where the story becomes most fascinating and most credible. When serious scientists looked at the Lake Iliamna mystery, they did not laugh it off. They proposed real biological candidates, and what those candidates reveal about the lake is disturbing. The most frequently cited explanation comes from Bruce Wright, a former marine ecologist with the National Marine Fisheries Service, later working independently. Wright spent years studying the accounts and conducting fieldwork at the lake. His initial theory centered on the Pacific sleeper shark, Somniosus pacificus. The Pacific sleeper shark is confirmed by NOAA Fisheries to be the largest shark species found in Alaskan waters, and potentially the largest predatory fish in the ocean. According to research published by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game and NOAA Fisheries, sleeper sharks can exceed 20 feet in length and are known to live for extraordinarily long periods. Some Greenland sharks, closely related members of the same family, have been aged at over 400 years using radiocarbon dating of eye tissue. The Pacific sleeper is similarly slow-growing and long-lived. Here's what NOAA Fisheries and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game's own research revealed about sleeper shark behavior, and it demolishes the idea that they're passive creatures. Biologist Lee Hulbert, formerly with the National Marine Fisheries Service and later with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, attached electronic tags to sleeper sharks and found that they never stop moving. One tagged animal logged 12,000 vertical meters of movement in a single 24-hour period. The researchers who analyzed that data said they had never seen anything like it from any animal. Sleeper sharks are, according to this official research, voracious stealth predators of fast-moving prey, not the slow bottom feeders their name implies. Could one, or several, have followed millions of salmon up the Kvichak River and into Lake Iliamna? The connection exists. The food source exists. The hiding depth exists. The physiological challenge of adapting to freshwater is real, but not impossible. There are documented cases of other shark species surviving in freshwater for extended periods. Wright himself eventually shifted his primary theory. After years of study, he came to believe the creatures might instead be an isolated population of enormous northern pike, a species already native to Alaskan freshwater systems, fully adapted to cold lakes, and capable in exceptional cases of reaching unusual sizes. Reports of the animal's behavior in the lake, circling, coordinating, herding prey, are consistent with what large pike do. Reports of the square-shaped, blunt head that witnesses describe also align more with pike anatomy than with shark anatomy. Others have proposed white sturgeon. White sturgeon, Accipenser transmontanus, are the largest freshwater fish in North America. They can exceed 20 feet in length, weigh over 1,500 pounds, and live for more than 100 years. They are documented in Pacific-connected river systems along the Alaskan coast. There are no confirmed white sturgeon in Lake Iliamna, but there is also no comprehensive survey that would rule them out. What all of these theories share is this: they are all plausible, and none of them fully explain all of the accounts. Witnesses who describe animals between 25 and 60 feet are not describing any known sturgeon or pike. Witnesses who describe metallic-looking skin that flashes in the sun, like polished aluminum, are describing something that doesn't match any commonly proposed candidate exactly. Before any pilot took flight over Lake Iliamna, before any scientist arrived with sonar equipment, the people who had lived beside this water for thousands of years already knew what was in it. The Tlingit people, whose territory extended across much of southern and coastal Alaska, preserved accounts of a great water animal they called Gana-Cadet, a creature of tremendous power, said to emerge from the depths with enough force to overturn large vessels and drag people under. These stories were not told for entertainment. They were functional knowledge, behavioral guidelines for how to read the water. when to come ashore, and how to survive. The Aleut people, who inhabited the Alaska Peninsula region, described creatures called jigik, animals that moved in groups, circled boats, and struck from below. Their oral histories and ceremonial songs described animals powerful enough to destroy wooden canoes. The practical instruction embedded in these accounts: never travel the lake alone, watch for sudden surface changes, leave when conditions shift unexpectedly, reflects the survival knowledge of people who had directly observed what the lake could do. When Russian fur traders entered the region in the 1700s, they were initially dismissive of these warnings. Their journals, however, began to fill with accounts of boats struck by unseen forces and men lost without explanation. The pattern across these accounts: metallic or silver-colored bodies, coordinated movement, surface attacks, matches what modern witnesses describe in striking detail. Even the lake's name preserves this history. According to G.C. Martin of the United States Geological Survey, Iliamna derives from a native word meaning the mythical great blackfish supposed to inhabit the lake, which bites holes in the canoes of bad natives. The U.S. Geological Survey noted this explicitly, which means the lake was named, at least in part, after a creature that people reported living in it. The monster did not come from the lake's legend. The lake's name came from the monster. That is not folklore. That is a centuries-old biological record, preserved in language. In recent years, the search for Iliamna's creatures has become more sophisticated and more unsettling. Environmental DNA sampling, or EDNA, is a cutting-edge technique in which scientists analyze water samples for fragments of genetic material shed by organisms that live in or pass through an environment. It has been used successfully to detect rare, elusive, and endangered species in aquatic systems worldwide. Researchers have discussed applying EDNA sampling to Lake Iliamna as a way to identify unknown species without requiring a physical capture. The technique doesn't require seeing the animal, only detecting the molecular traces it leaves behind. Bruce Wright has also used underwater camera systems lowered to depth in various parts of the lake. These systems have returned footage, but the footage has been frustratingly inconclusive. The size of the lake defeats any systematic effort. With over 1,000 square miles of surface area and nearly 1,000 feet of depth, placing a stationary camera in any one location is like trying to photograph a specific person by pointing a single camera at one window in Manhattan. Drone technology has added a new aerial dimension. Operators flying UAVs over the lake have captured footage of large, dark shapes moving beneath the surface. Shapes too large for known fish species and too streamlined for loose schools of salmon. These recordings are consistent with earlier pilot accounts, and the lake continues to produce anomalies that remain unexplained. Fishermen operating in the lake report losing gear, not to rocks or ice, but to something that pulls with directional force. Commercial-grade halibut longline hooks, made of heavy steel, have been recovered bent. Nets rated for substantial tension come back shredded in ways consistent with bite rather than abrasion. None of it is definitive. All of it is consistent. What distinguishes the Iliamna accounts from most cryptid stories is the behavioral detail embedded in witness testimony. Across dozens of independent accounts spanning more than 80 years, certain behavioral patterns repeat without coordination. Witnesses from different eras, different backgrounds, and different locations around the lake describe the same things. The animals move in groups. This is not the behavior of a solitary relic. This suggests a functioning population, animals with social structure, which means they are breeding, which means they are young, which means there is a reproductive cycle sustaining a community of these creatures across generations. The animals are reported to hunt cooperatively. The moose hunters who witnessed the swan attack described two animals working in coordination, one apparently herding while the other struck. Bruce Wright's collected accounts include multiple descriptions of creatures circling prey, driving it towards shallower water, and then striking together. This is sophisticated predatory behavior, documented in known species like orcas and certain shark populations, but extremely unusual in freshwater fish. The animals are attracted to certain colors. Multiple indigenous accounts and modern fishermen's reports note an apparent response to red. Fishing gear marked in red is reportedly damaged or taken more often. This is behavioral intelligence operating at a specific, targeted level, and the animals avoid detection with unusual effectiveness. Despite more than 80 years of aerial observation, photographic attempts, and modern sonar sweeps, not a single confirmed specimen has been captured or photographed. In a lake with millions of salmon and a resident seal population, for a large apex predator to remain undocumented, it must be actively avoiding the surface, diving deep when it detects disturbance, staying in the dark water below the thermocline during daylight. That kind of behavioral evasiveness is not instinctive in simple animals. It suggests something that has learned, across generations, to avoid whatever appears above. No one has captured one. No body has ever washed ashore. No camera has produced an undeniable image. But the aggregate of verified, credible, documented evidence points toward a conclusion that even skeptical scientists acknowledge. Something large, unknown, and behaviorally sophisticated lives in Lake Iliamna. The most scientifically defensible explanation remains a population of large fish, either an unknown or undocumented population of northern pike of exceptional size, a population of Pacific sleeper sharks that adapted to the freshwater environment via the Kvichak River, or less likely but not impossible, a population of white sturgeon. Any of these explanations would account for most of the physical evidence. The damaged gear, the bent hooks, the shredded nets, the large shapes visible from the air. What none of them fully account for are the extreme size estimates from credible professional observers, the metallic skin descriptions, or the coordinated hunting behavior. If the answer is pike or sturgeon, they are behaving in ways that have never been documented for those species anywhere else in the world. The alternative, that something entirely unknown inhabits the lake, perhaps a relic population of a species not yet cataloged by science, cannot be dismissed in an environment this remote and this understudied. The deep freshwater